Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Baroque Literary Arts. In nomine Sanitatis et Populis Quod Roma, in the name of the Senate and people of Rome, welcome to Beyond Baroque. That's just to get your attention. And I'm going to repeat the sound check for any readers who may have just come in. As you can see, this is the mic that is going to be amplifying you. This is the mic that's going to be recording you. You can see I'm fairly far away from that mic, but you can hear me fine, right? Yes. And I will be in the booth anyway to adjust levels if necessary. So if anybody reads really, really soft, I'll up the volume. But now that I've taken care of that technical business, please relax, readers. That's the only technical thing you're going to hear. And everybody else, welcome to Beyond Baroque. Thank you for coming out today. People who cannot find a seat. Some of these reserved seats are now free, so if you don't want to stand in the back, you can come and take a seat up here, and there's some seats over on the side as well. So now is the time to do that while I'm talking, because I'm the least important part of the program. So welcome to Beyond Baroque. Thank you for coming out today. I wanted to start out by welcoming our friends from the American Civil Liberties Union. Yeah. They have a table outside, and usually I promote Beyond Baroque by offering our premiums, but today I'm going to offer their premium, which is a tremendously terrific documentary about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So they are going to give this to you if you become a member today, if you are not already a member. So if your membership has lapsed, renew it today. If you're not a member, now more than ever, the ACLU needs members and contributions, because they have a lot of work to do these days, as I'm sure you're all aware. I mean, that's why we're here. And ACLU is critical to the resistance. It's critical on all levels, and it is an organization that has a distinguished history. It goes back to defending the rights of all sorts of people, especially in its early days. It defended the rights of immigrants who were considered politically suspect. Just for having views that were unorthodox. So that's just one of the things that the ACLU does, and of course it's expanded its efforts on behalf of all kinds of minorities, and it is the prime defender of civil liberties in the United States of America. So it does need your support, and well, they're going to say a little bit more about what they do later, but I wanted to throw in my own particular view of the ACLU. I've been a member since I think 74, something like that, or maybe it was 75. Anyway, again, welcome to Beyond Baroque. Very briefly, most of you know that Beyond Baroque is a nonprofit arts organization. We are now starting our 51st year of existence. If we last another 50 years, very likely we will have to move our operations to the second floor, because we're going to be close to the boardwalk. The boardwalk is going to move inland. It might even be at Lincoln Boulevard. Who knows? We hope not, though. But that's an issue that we are. One of the things that the resistance is about is drawing attention to those types of issues that are sadly and unhappily being ignored by the administration in Washington now. But we are a nonprofit. We do cultivate the spoken word arts, although we have a history with music. We have a gallery called the Mike Kelly Gallery. Mike Kelly was in the Wednesday night poetry workshop. He became known as a visual artist. He also did happenings, some of which he staged here right on this stage here at Beyond Baroque. And we are basically an arts center, a general arts center, but we are devoted to poetry and to the written word more than anything else. And Beyond Baroque has a lot of free things going on here. The famous Wednesday night workshop is still happening. In addition to 3 other poetry workshops throughout there's 2 on the weekdays. There's one on Monday morning, one on Wednesday morning, the Wednesday night workshop, and 2 on Saturday. So please do pick up a calendar to find out about these workshops and all of the other things that we do here at Beyond Baroque, and all of the events that are coming up. And I want to mention one of them. We are having a tribute to Nozaki Shonge that is being hosted and produced by Shonda Buchanan, who is one of the readers today. And please don't miss that one. So you can find out details on the website and in the calendar. That is all I have to say about Beyond Baroque. Next up is our host for the afternoon, Lynne Thompson.
I'd love to say I was the host, but I'm welcoming you all on behalf of our co-hosts, Jim Natal, David St. John, and Emily Vizzo, who can't be with us today. This is our third installment of Writers Resist. Hopefully next year it will be Writers Celebrate, when some things have changed in that other side of the country. I want to welcome you here in the name of the teachers of Los Angeles, who will be walking out tomorrow to fight for support for our kids. Most important thing anybody does is educate our children. I want to welcome you in the name of all of those who are working on behalf of immigrants, of which I'm proud to say my parents were too, to resist the horror that's being created by Washington. And because our resistance isn't only local, I want to welcome you on behalf of everyone, the press in particular, who is working so hard to bring us the news despite every effort not to have us hear the news, and to demonstrate, like we will demonstrate this afternoon, that language has meaning and we are all witnesses. So I have blathered on longer than I told Jim I would blather on. So to explain the support for this reading, I'm so pleased to introduce my friend, he who doesn't need to be named, David St. John.
So once again, thank you all for being here, both the readers, the writers, the audience. As you know, 2 years ago, when we had the first Writers Resist event here at Beyond Baroque, it was before the inauguration, and we had, even then, a sense of the horrors ahead. But none of us could have anticipated what these last 2 years have been like. Everything we believe in, every humane principle, every ethical choice, every environmental choice has been either repealed or undermined or ignored. But as writers, what we stand for and stand together about is what language can do, what words can do, and what stories can do. We all tell our own stories and the stories of others. It's not enough to tell of our own experiences. We need to tell the stories of those who are not us, of those who are other than us. Nothing creates empathy as quickly and immediately and powerfully as language, as poetry, as essays, as fiction. It is what we do. It is why we're here. The attacks of the last 2 years have been, above all, attacks on language and the relevance of language, the importance of language, and the agency of language. So we're here because we stand together that we won't let that happen. And so today's event, today's reading, is to remind ourselves that we still have so much work to do. From the very beginning, there are two organizations, PEN America and the ACLU, who have been here to be part of this. Is Natalie here? Where's Natalie Green? Natalie. This is Natalie Green from PEN America.
I'm Natalie Green, and sometimes, as much as I don't like to admit it, I'm tired. Isn't it hard sometimes to be a writer and think about all of the things you need to think about? From climate change to government shutdowns to teacher strikes, and then also have a job. Normally a full-time job, or really a second or a third full-time job. On top of being a writer and a thinker, you are a teacher, or a parent, or a partner, or a programs manager at a literary arts nonprofit and human rights organization. Or sometimes all of the above. But when I receive an email from Jim, in concert with co-organizers Lynne, David, and Emily, ACLU and Beyond Baroque, about the third consecutive year we'll join together in resistance alongside of LA's very best and thought-provoking writers, it doesn't matter if I'm tired or if we're all tired, because the answer is yes. The answer will always be yes. 2018 for PEN America was busy. Our New York and LA offices unified to better defend free expression nationally and worldwide. We amplified diverse voices through our literary arts programming, Emerging Voices Fellowship, and New Writing for Justice Fellowship. We launched our first writing workshop out of prison, released reports and administered training sessions on defending against online harassment, and filed a lawsuit against President Trump for his threats against free press. In 2019, there will be all this and more. If you're not already, please consider signing up for a PEN America membership today. The woman who is all things wonderful, Stacey Vallis, is here with me to assist in collecting your hard-earned cash. If a membership isn't possible, sign up for our newsletter or chat with me about what work you'd like to see PEN America do here in LA. And most of all, thank you for helping me feel not so tired, for reminding me through your words and actions that together we can get up each day and resist.
And now from the ACLU, it's my great pleasure to introduce Spencer Wines.
I'm really glad that Natalie mentioned being tired, because I'm tired, and I think we all are tired. It seems like our 2-year national crisis just keeps going on and just keeps getting worse. But I want to talk a little bit about hope. There's a program called the Temporary Protective Status. What this program does is when refugees come to this country from countries that are in crisis, it allows them to stay here. So we have refugees from places like Haiti, El Salvador, Sudan, who are here in this country. Some of them have been here for years, decades. There are over 300,000 people protected under about 5 different countries. And their status is reviewed every few years by the State Department. They look at it and they say, is this country still in crisis? If so, these folks should remain. And this has been going on for a long time. Well, Donald Trump heard about this, and he wasn't happy. In fact, he had a meeting in the Oval Office where he ranted and raved about these being shithole countries, and how he wanted instead for us to get refugees from Norway. I don't believe that he meant the Muslims who live in Norway, but I think we understand what he meant. So the State Department did its job. All the professionals, they looked at these countries and they said, no, they're still in crisis. We should continue this. But then his appointees in the State Department rewrote the conclusions. And as one professional in the State Department said, it's like they were 2 different papers. Here's outlining everything that's going on in these countries and why they aren't safe. Here's the conclusion that we should end TPS and deport these people. We're talking about over 300,000 of our neighbors who collectively have over 200,000 American-born U.S. citizen children. And the Trump administration was going to kick them all out of the country. Well, I have a coworker named Ahilan. He's a very nice guy. He's very humble, very quiet, which is unusual because he's an attorney. He's actually our legal director. So he went into court back in the end of November, and he presented a really novel legal argument. It is illegal in America to base policy based on being a racist, being a bigot. And he argued that this policy was being changed. These people were going to be deported because the President of the United States and his appointees were racist. And to make this argument, he used their own words. And he showed to the judge exactly what was motivating them. And it was not a sincere belief that conditions were better in Haiti. It was simply that they wanted people of color out of this country. The judge agreed. And the judge issued a ruling stopping the deportation of more than 300,000 people. I saw Eileen in the kitchen at the office a couple days later, and I said to him, Ahilan, congratulations. And he's like, oh, yeah, you know. And I said, you materially affected 500,000 lives of our neighbors and people in our country. And he's a humble guy, and he actually blushed. I've never seen a lawyer blush. I am in awe of the people I work with. I'm not an attorney. I just raise money for the ACLU. But the things that they do and the cases that we've won, the system is holding. Yes, it's under stress. But we have won ruling after ruling where we have been able to prove what the administration has tried to do is illegal and unconstitutional. Over and over, we've done it. I put together this little pamphlet recently, and this is just some of the cases we've won against the Trump administration from the LA office alone. We have filed over 200 lawsuits against the Trump administration. We have stopped most of their worst intentions. We've done that because the law is on our side and the people are on our side. And we do it because people like you support us. We need that support. The level of work has not decreased, it has increased. As the administration's appointees have gotten dug into the various agencies, they figured out new and inventive ways to screw people of color and immigrants and gay people and minorities and people expressing their free speech. They found new ways to do it. And so we have to get more creative. And our work rate has not gone down, although right now it is very nice. We have several cases that aren't being heard because the courts aren't open. So we'll take that. But, you know, honestly, it's just getting worse. But we can't lose hope because when my coworker goes in there and spends a day in court and stops the deportation of 500,000 people in this country, we can win. And we can win again and again and again. So thank you for supporting us. Thank you for making it possible. This is our 99th year at the ACLU, and it happens because of you. Thank you.
So before you leave today, please stop at the table where PEN America and the ACLU have their materials. And now to introduce the next part of the day and the reading, my pal, Jim Natal.
Well, thank you all for being here. And as we said last year, maybe next year it'll be a celebration instead of a resistance reading, but that wasn't going to happen, I guess. So here we are again, and we'll be back again next year. You know, and maybe next year will be a celebration, and we'll see. I'm here to keep and get today's thunder rolling. So I'm going to read a piece real quick from a new collection I have coming out that's all written in high bun form. And some of you may not know what a high bun poem is. It's a block of crafted prose that has a kind of a complimentary and a dialogue with a little haiku at the end. So when I get to the end, I'll kind of go like this just so you know I'm at the haiku. It works, you know. Back when I was a kid and World War II was over but still moribund, and movies of courageous American soldiers were on TV in black and white, and Chicago stations signed off at midnight with grainy images of military air power, sea power, artillery. While the national anthem played, the flag waved, and my comic books featured grizzled GI superheroes growling jut-jawed about Krauts and Jerry, and Julius and Ethel Rosenberg got the chair for being Soviet spies, and I heard my parents talking about our upstairs neighbors who had to flee from Austria, and the DMZ divided Korea into communist North and Ally South, and the Manchurian candidate put insidious fear of what could happen into us all, and we did duck and cover drills at our desks at school so we could survive an atomic bomb. and the HUAC hearings intimidated, ruined, tried to root out communist actors, writers, directors who had allegedly infiltrated Hollywood, and walls were going up in Berlin, block by block, and nuclear annihilation, and the communists were a stone's skip away from Miami. And a game of communist dominoes was playing out in Southeast Asia, while riots and protests filled the streets of home with rage, tear gas, broken glass, and fires. And my father and I argued until the last rescue helicopter lifted from a Saigon rooftop, and the communists had won, and missiles were stockpiled and counted on charts. Back then, the anxiety was communists under every bed, never in bed with our president. Late autumn, my dad swapping storm windows for screens so snow won't seep in. Thank you. It is my great pleasure to bring up our first official reader, Doug Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
One of my favorite poets is George Oppen, and as most of you know in the room, George Oppen had to leave writing poetry because it just wasn't enough for the time, and he felt he and his wife had to do more. I am honored to be amongst all of these writers and artists who are using our words to not only to resist, but to be active in the world and to make change as language does. I am named after someone who also did that. My full name is Frederick Douglass Brown.
Hey.
You guys know him. And I'm going to read some poems in his voice. It's called, I'm going to do a little remix of poems, Why I Read and Why I Write. Oh Lord, find me in the field. I'm a service to papers, service to dark ink, a servant to my blood. Oh Lord, get me. Old Master Auld said, if you teach that nigga to read, there'll be no keeping him. So I became determined to read. I saved biscuits and jam for the poor white boys, traded a piece of pork for pencils and paper, or a lesson on cursive, or a story read aloud by someone who knew the correct pronunciation. Sometimes I'd sing a bit, lull them to nap so I could read an extra passage or poem. I could feel my stars alter their path, a grand achievement evolving. To write is to fill my belly. To read is a pail of coal I can throw into a fire deep inside of me. My heart burns through page after page. Reading to the sunrise was not wise, but the risk was what I knew. Like my mother, I only have a small torch to guide me. When I read, I cover her hideous 12 miles. By day, I hide books in holes, brush the dirt off every night. Most of the time, I am alone, reading to myself. Frederick Douglass, how spoiled you are to have a weapon of this size, concealed. Freedom on my face radiates with each word I read. Let there be illusion, light to dispel what work and whip bring. Let me cleave with a pencil the way I chop wood, ready for winter, ready when impossibility rocks me complacent. when light is only a speck buzzing in my ear. Let golden pages lift me, elbow up. Let the flame burn words into my dark eyes, my damn dark eyes. Brothers and sisters, the red brings us together. Blood lines to write the red, to write spirit, to write the toil. Yes, we have so much work to do. Thank you. I'd like to introduce our next reader, Shonda Buchanan. Shonda.
Hey.
All right. So this is Dear beautiful black wrestler boy, you are not the cutting of your locks. You are instead the lotus wind escaping from the slits in the laughing earth when a great tale is being told, when fault lines shift, when virgins disappear, when houses crumble. You are not scissor hands of someone you trusted yanking out your roots and branches. Instead, you are Hannibal's 37 elephants, 15,000 horses, 30,000 soldiers making the Alps tremble in a destined march to end the empire of tired, corrupt men. You are not the timber sound of your hair falling on a mat. You are instead the tender moment of language when it convinces love to come, to trust, and to live in a dangerous place anyway. You are not decent, complicit eyes ignoring your public rape. Not one man's small, useless organ beating in a placid, soon-to-die heart. You are not the weakness of your knees, not the tightness of your throat, not the double cracking of your lungs, your back to us, your cheeks dry, shocked by the sudden taste of history in your mouth, boy becoming man, man becoming leader, leader becoming king, return to us. You are the porcelain of dreams, the wet of water, the cold jade of fire on the tip of a poet's spear. You are the darkest of darkness where black magic is born. You are magic. You are greenery and Coptic crosses. Excuse me. You are not defeated. You are the precious spell I cast. Your body is the ancient tongue that holds the baby's placenta palm secrets. You are Wanda Coleman's ghost, pissed and on fire. You are the ancestors singing of you long before the stars wept slave blood when America was born. You are the blade we polished again and again by the antebellum fire's light so we could live, so we could get you here. You will not die with their hands in your hair. We will not die with their hands in our hair. You are James Baldwin's caterpillar hatchet eyes. You are family unions and first loves and teeth under pillows. You are books and prayer beads in the hands of children. You are Aretha's 2 changes of outfits in her casket. You are cowrie shells in the hands of elders. You are beautiful black rose boys in a field of beautiful black rose boys. You are alive. You are magic. You are alive. You are magic. You will never be defeated. Beautiful black wrestler boy. You are magic. You are alive. You are magic. Thank you. So that was a test fire poem. I wrote that last night. So it was like you had to like get that, get it out, resist. Elena, Karina, Byrne.
Yeah.
After the final no, there comes a yes, and on that yes, the future world depends. Yeah. Wallace Stevens. Yeah. That's for all of us. And thank you for the amazing Jim Natal. For Lynne Thompson, who has a kick-ass new book coming out, chosen by Jane Hirschfield, and for David St. John, who is the jet, blood, artery of poetry for our community for so long. I'm going to read 3 very short ekphrastic poems for this, and for us, and for everyone who's not here. Artist Sophie Callie, now take care of yourself for those trying to get here. No one gets to be happy here unless happy means pain is exquisite, if you let it. Follow us to the animal bedroom, through the drive-through chapel, walkabout, child, fairy tale, day, hour it takes to become a stranger, where you can't see you. Your hand on the heart like a small anvil, where mothers will make mistakes, politicians appear, speaking from mounting sea trash and border wires, meshed lingo, what fathers can make gunpowder snuff for the blind. But come here anyway, to this continent in a floating wardrobe boat. Follow the past to this missing solitude place. There will be a money jar, pink hot water bottle, 1 duck-handled umbrella gun waiting for you. This is where you will weep from your eyes only, making no sound, as if your foreign voice was taken away elsewhere, separated, voyaged far from your body, farther like an orphan not knowing her home was just a cage unlocked all along. Reality may still be unacceptable, Gerard Richter, a repeating dream I'm belly down at 11 for my German Jew great-grandfather. Beneath barbed wire like bed springs during night climbs, dirt under my shirt, saving babies in the dark slide of buildings' vents into canvas flap backs of trucks, a chaos of fleeing. Tell me, isn't that art? An in crisis or crime pull away, toward and away from, color blocks moving toward and away. Painting is a leave-taking. Death, a leave-taking. Fleeing great-grandfather out of fear changed his name with his family's country, confounded something that is still missing there, where I see the truck that fell off the cliff toward an ocean blur, rusted before I was born, bitten by cactus needles and fennelweed, my language in an unbroken string of cruelty, of color too far away to see. Look at all the disquiet pictures that fell into our laps. 3 times the head of the dead daily coming blurred back out of the family history chaos, like a mother's hairpins falling from the pine trees, dried blood hemming the floor of your bedroom closed door, child's body color of rust. And that's okay. This is in for Rauschenberg's Dante, voting 2020. Please fucking get everyone to vote. Please, based on this cutout transfer, crude as my one sorrow head, might have it, face down, soaked in lighter fluid. Let this vexed day count for our threshold to home. The itinerary epitome me you saw shake its history shroud over the balcony, over the fire balcony. Can you see that fine circle of hell, punishment smile from the Mona and the Lisa, from the void oasis in the political mirror? Is it a bullying look in the eye you still want? Rubbed by the low coal of exit dawn's everyday smudge and newspaper gray, one false kiss emerges, killing thousands. And the sky overhead is made of blue jay feathers and mocking. Free water below has become a wagon road of Kanto stones, and my unknown neighbor walks knee-deep in its absence. And there, a white fence is implied. And I ask my dead dad to lift me up over. Thank you. The fabulous poet laureate, Robin Coste-Lewis.
Thank you for inviting me. You all are amazing, beyond Baroque. I'm very, it's been a very sacred place for me since I was a teenage girl. So thank you for having me. I'm not going to say thank you to all the same people again, but thank you. And the ACLU people in the lobby and the Penn people in the lobby, thank you. Truly thank you. I'm just going to go off script for 2 seconds. One is, I want to suggest to you or remind us all that we voted Barack Obama in office not once but twice, right? So this whole notion of hope, we need to, I feel for myself that I need to throw the word hope out of the window and just do it, right? We did it once before, we did it twice before. It's our country, it's our party, it's our parties, right? There's no reason to hope, we have to do it, period. As my son would say, channeling Yoda, there is no try. Try, there is no try. Do, right? And we did it, you guys. We don't have to sit in this position of reactivity, right? We don't need to resist, we can attack. We attack, we do not resist, okay? So for this upcoming election, he's out, period. There's nothing else there's no question. When we voted for Obama, we all, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I was like, he's getting in office, period. Right? And then we proceeded to do everything in our power to make that happen. And Obama said in his acceptance speech, you did this. And we can do it again. It is our power, it is our country. There is no reason to resist, we will attack. There's no reason to hope, we will do. Okay? Okay. To that end, I would like to talk about sexism. It's very easy to think about 45 and forget that we are in a context of extremely toxic patriarchy, extremely toxic masculinity. And to that end, it's also very easy to forget that this has been going on for millennia, right? It's not funny. And that, as much as anything else, needs to change. So I'm going to read some new poems, but I'm also going to read one old poem, and it's called Verga. Verga has the distinction in Italian and Spanish of meaning both rod or stick or virgin. Go figure. It has an epigraph. It has an epigraph, and I'm reading this poem for all the women and all the men in the world who have been victims of sexual violence of any sort. The epigraph is from Abshira Aden Mohammed, who was in a Dagaheli Somali refugee camp in 2000. In Kenya. Here's the epigraph. Women don't want the men to go into the bush because the women will only be raped, but the men will be killed. I have seen a woman who was caught in the bush by several men. They tied her legs to 2 trees while she was standing. They raped her many times, and before leaving her, they put stones in her vagina. That's Abshir Aden Mohammed, and this poem is Verga. Before leaving her, they put stones in her vagina. The men will only be raped, but the stones will be killed. The bush caught many men to go into the stones. The stones will be killed by several trees before leaving. The bush tied the men to the trees in their vaginas. Before bush go to trees, they kill many stones.
Many men will be caught by the trees in the bush. Several trees will be raped by the bush and then killed. Only the caught men will be stoned and bushed by the trees. Several men were caught by the trees before leaving. The men will be killed, but the stones will only be treed. The stones put many trees into the men's killed vaginas. By the bush, the trees were raped only several times. Before leaving, the vaginas were seen standing in the stones. You guys know the famous, Daguerre's famous Boulevard du Temple, the photograph, the first photograph that contained a human figure in history? Okay, quickly. It should have, so Boulevard du Temple, Paris, 1838, it should have captured a whole bustling street of people and movement and horses and all of these things, but because the aperture was so slow, it's new photographic technology, right? The first photograph, it can only capture a bootblack shining a man's shoes in the middle of the 19th century. I've always found that curious, that the only person in the 19th century that could be captured by accident was a person in a subservient position. I wrote this poem, Self-Portrait as a Bootblack in Daguerre's Boulevard du Temple. I don't believe I thought or gave names in any known language. I spoke of myself always in the third person. What led up to it, I hadn't the faintest idea. I only knew the event itself took place. Constant discrepancies, to throw them off, I laughed, talked all games and amusements to escape from the burden of my own internal history. But I was there, trying for once to see you, longed so to see you. I might meet you in the street, a bicycle leaning up against the wall by the window. Rendered laws of my country played before my face, historical, two-souled, forgotten, unknown freaks of memory. The matter of debts, the violent death of a near relation, and all landing at the faintest conception. Dark, blue, and then all I can remember is when I saw you. It was you or anyone else. The shot seemed to end all. It belongs to the new world, the present all entangled, unable to move. Everything turned around and looked at you. Thank you. Reason for the girls. God goes out for whiskey Friday night, staggers back Monday morning empty-handed, no explanation. After 3 nights of not sleeping, 3 nights of listening for his footsteps, his mule sliding deftly under my bed, I stand at the stove, giving him my back, wearing the same tight, tacky dress, same slip, same seam stockings I put on before he left. He leans on the kitchen table, waiting for me to make him his coffee. I watch the water boil, refuse to turn around, wonder how to leave him. Woman, he slurs, when have I ever done what you wanted me to do? Thank you. And then I'm just going to close with the latest poem. I wrote it for Witten, the painter, the artist. But I think it's relevant to the theme of the day. Mother Church number 10, homage to Witten. Once you were a saddle made of smoothed wood, a saddle worn by a stallion, crab stepping over the sand on the bottom of the ocean. Once you were an omen, ochre and dusted with rust, or you were just gray matter, sawdust but still everything. You were an alarm clock, you were linen, you were twine once. You were a fragrant black tin of shoe polish my dead father left, tucked way back inside the kitchen drawer. Only you can read this. Black mulberry, marble, glue, pane of glass, copper, wire, wax, wild cypress, brass. I've placed all the bones you will ever need inside you. I challenged every zealous god and nailed each one down here for you. olive tree, a lock of virgin's hair. Outside I am a bird, but inside I am a boat in which I ferry our future back and forth between the ancient and modern world. I sleep where Socrates slept, inside a burning tree, spears rushing the door. I am trying to make the wood happy. Every engine in the world depends upon me. Thank you. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Eileen Cronin. Thank you.
I'm reading for the disabled activists who saved our healthcare system, only to have our civil rights voted out by the House, which we voted out. This is not work about disability because I'm too depressed about that right now. I've spent the last couple of years working on a novel, focusing more on Catholicism, substance abuse, misogyny. That's another part of my life, but this particular part is a little more fun. It's from a novel entitled Darlings of Paradise. It's set in a fictional town, Rebel Run, Virginia, which in 2007 was going from red to purple to blue, and we owe that to Obama. Before he reached the Barnett Hall shuttle, a rusty VW microbus, Dean's high tops landed in gray slush. He banged on the side door. The red-headed driver with hairy fists waved him in. "Climb on back, another kid's coming." Inside, Dean asked, "Could you turn up the heat, please?" "It's high as it goes." Dean fell back on an exposed spring and took off his shoes. He started to peel off his socks and climb up front when the driver said, "Stop right there, no smelly feet." "But my socks are wet, and that's my problem?" Dean looked at the man, who couldn't be more than 5 years older, stocky, feet barely reaching the pedals. Just then another boy entered, hands shoved into both pockets of a pea coat, his white blonde hair and a jarhead haircut. He went straight to the far back seat. "What are we waiting for?" he said. "Ask your pal," said the driver, pointing at Dean's feet. "He wants me to..." "Then do it!" The boy's muscles tightened at his temples. Dean folded his arms defiantly. The driver puffed on his cigarette, turned to the mountains, and said, "I get paid by the hour." The boy came so close that Dean saw the spray of prickly white nubs on his chin. "I'll put those damn shoes on you by way of your stupid ass if you don't move it." "Jesus!" Dean put the shoes back on, his toes curling up inside. "Attaboy," said the driver, shifting gears and taking off. Not another word was spoken until Winchester. As they pulled up to a shotgun house, a woman in a tatty bathrobe greeted her son with a jerk of the chin. The driver handed a business card to the boy on his way out. The boy laughed. "I've heard of you. Anytime you need a pickup. Good to know." The boy hopped out and rammed the sliding door shut. The van took off again, rattling against fierce winds. Dean blew into his fists. Behind them, the sun settled into the Piedmont. The sky, a blood-orange strip over purple slopes. Dean started to move up to the passenger seat. The driver's hand shot up. "House rules." "I'm freezing." The driver rolled his eyes. "Okay, fine." Dean hesitated at this sudden act of generosity, but sat up front anyway. When he finally saw the sign announcing Rebel Run, he said, "Could you drop me off at the hospital?" "You don't look hurt to me," the driver teased. "Broken heart? What are you talking about?" "Come on, I see all kinds. You're a Romeo." "Whatever." Dean glanced out the window and saw a deer step out of the woods near the lake where he used to fish with his dad. The deer stared at Dean before it took off. "I need to go to the hospital. My mom is working there and I don't have my keys." "Sorry. House rules. They'll fire my ass if I take you anywhere but home." It's getting dark. Look, I won't tell anyone. Just call your mom. You know, they don't let you keep your cell in the can. You call Darn It Hall the can. The driver slapped the heel of his hairy palm on his head. Darn it, got caught with pot. He laughed, took out another cigarette, punched in the lighter. That place is Polly Pocket shit. You need to go downstate for the can, and they do take kids there nowadays. They don't escort you in a kiddie car either. The orange light crackled on the cigarette. You go in a sheriff's cruiser, wearing shackles. Dean imagined Travis in shackles. The thought of it was unbearable, especially now as Dean was being released. My friend is downstate. I'll bet he's black, right? And all you got sent to was Darn It Hall because you're white. And you aren't white? I'm not the one taking the kiddie car from rehab. You call this the kiddie car? You won't drop me off at the hospital to meet my mom because of house rules, but you'll smoke in a rehab van? And who the hell is Polly Pocket? Polly Pocket, itty-bitty plastic chick. The driver made an inch with his fingers to show how big. Comes with accessories. My kid plays with Polly's Fashion Center. You never heard of Polly? He waved his cigarette and ashes fluttered. I dropped this chick off in McLean last week, one of those McMansions. 12 years old and she's hooked on junk. She plays with Polly. He blew smoke at Dean. She made me promise not to tell. You have a kid? Asked Dean. The driver opened the window and tossed out the cigarette before veering onto the exit ramp at the last minute, almost running over a vet who balanced a cardboard sign on the stump of his arm that read, "Need a handout." I got 2 kids, said the driver. Do they live with you? The van stopped with a jerk at the light. The driver threw up his arms. What kind of a question is that? What? My dad doesn't live with me. The light changed. The driver shifted gears. Look, dude, how much money do you have? Now you're taking bribes? I'm not taking shit, the driver accelerated. I'm taking you home. Wait, Dean reached into his pocket. I'll give you $10. What hospital is she at? Rebel Run. 20? What? A cab will cost you that, then you have to wait for it after you get to a phone. Okay, 20. Dean didn't have 20, but that would be the driver's problem. You set up? Asked the driver. Set up? You got a dealer. Dean threw up his arms. I just got out of rehab. I know, I'm the driver, remember? At a stop sign, he turned to Dean. You think you've got your head together, but you don't. How do you know? Dean tried to challenge him with his eyes, but the driver didn't even blink, and Dean had to look away. I got an eye for these things, said the driver. I can tell you that this Polly Pocket chick in her McMansion has her shit together more than you ever will. Bet you haven't even met Auntie Hazel. Dean took his next breath cautiously. Auntie who? Hazel, bitch! Heroin? Dean's eyes crinkled. Heroin, mimicked the driver in a munchkin voice. They pulled into the ER loop. The driver stopped shy of the glass doors at the top. A red sign announced emergency. Dean focused on the light that spilled from the glass doors. He imagined himself being dropped off by his dad from a soccer game. His mom would be at the nurse's station. She might be scribbling notes when she would look up. Score any goals? He cranked the door handle, but it wouldn't open. I know what you're thinking, that I kitty-proofed the door, but maybe it just doesn't like you. Huh? It breaks for people who aren't ready to graduate. Geoff Dyer, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'll do, Marsha. Hi, everyone. I know this is supposed to be an American first kind of afternoon. I was rather shocked when Jim and David really emphasised that in their instructions to the readers, so I'm glad I'm not the only one. But I thought I'd resist that idea by reading a little bit from Raymond Williams's book, the culture, the country and the city. And it's about those lovely stately homes, things like, Brideshead, Downton Abbey, those wonderful, beautiful houses that we've come to see as images of Englishness itself. Williams talks about how beautiful they are, but then says he reminds us that it was in the 18th century, most visibly, that these strong points of a class spread in a close network over so much of Britain, with subsidiary effects on attitudes to landscape and to nature. But consider directly their social effect. Some of them had been there for centuries, visible triumphs over the ruin and labour of others. But the extraordinary phase of extension, rebuilding and enlarging, which occurred in the 18th century, represents a spectacular increase in the rate of exploitation. A good deal of it, of course, the profit of trade and of colonial exploitation. Much of it, however, the higher surplus value of a new and more efficient mode of production. It is fashionable to admire these extraordinarily numerous houses, the extended manors, the neoclassical mansions that lie so close in rural Britain. People still pass from village to village, guidebook in hand, to see the next and yet the next example, to look at the stones and the furniture. But stand at any point and look at that land. Look at what those fields, those streams, those woods even today produce. Think it through as labour and see how long and systematic the exploitation and seizure must have been to have reared that many houses on that scale. See, by contrast, what any isolated farm in uncounted generations of labour has managed to become by the efforts of any single real family, however prolonged. And then turn and look at what these other families, these systematic owners have accumulated and arrogantly declared. It isn't only that you know, looking at the land and then at the house, how much robbery and fraud there must have been for so long to produce that degree of disparity, that barbarous disproportion of scale. The working farms and cottages are so small beside them. What men really raise by their own efforts or by such portion as is left to them in the ordinary scale of human achievement. What these great houses do is to break the scale by an act of will corresponding to their real and systematic exploitation of others. For look at the sites, the facades, the defining avenues and walls, the great iron gates and the guardian lodges where so many admirers, too many of them writers, have stood and shared the view, finding its prospect delightful. They were chosen also, you now see, for the other effect, from the outside looking in, a visible stamping of power, of displayed wealth and command, a social disproportion which was meant to impress and overawe. Much of the real profit of a more modern agriculture went not into productive investment, but into that explicit social declaration, a mutually competitive but still uniform exposition at every turn of an established and commanding class power. To stand in that shadow, even today, is to know what many generations of countrymen bitterly learned and were consciously taught, that these were the families, this the shape of the society. And will you then think of community? You will see modern community only in the welcome signs of some partial reclamation, the houses returned to some general use as a hospital or agricultural college. But you are just as likely to see the old kinds of power still declared in the surviving exploiters and in their modern relations, the corporate country house, the industrial seat, the ruling class school, Physically, they are still there, the explicit forms of the long class society. Thank you. And now we have Marsha de la O.
I have one poem, and it's an acrostic poem. It's based on a painting by Bruegel. The painting is called Mad Meg. That's in English, done in the 16th century. And what it shows is a giant woman striding directly toward the open mouth of hell. And coming out of hell are all these creatures, like Hieronymus Bosch type creatures. And this woman, Meg, is not very pretty and not very nice. And she looks almost transfigured by determination. Maybe she's going down to harrow hell. Or maybe there's something down there that belongs to her, and she's going down there to retrieve it. Behind her, there's a small army of women, and they're tiny women, marching through this tiny town, looting and pillaging as they go. There are soldiers that are stopping them and overpowering them. The whole thing is like a visual analog for the statement, all hell breaks loose when women don't remember their place. I haven't started. Mad Meg. Suppose anger is a habitation. One day the walls go plum red, crackle into flame. You rush out, and 1,000 other women are stepping through fiery door jambs. It happened that way. Our bones created a burning village. Our bones said coruscate. Our bones said gorgeous. We'd eaten dust for years, never knew how explosive it was. All I said was, I'm so hungry I could gut a house. The women sprang up behind me like a battalion of excellent witches. They shouted, are you tired of feeling for all of Flanders? When I screamed yes, the column began to march. Most of my questions are giants themselves. The doctors blamed me for mystery glands, ropey webs of blood. By then, my body had grown a great bosom, a hot volume. Glands are secrets never to be discussed. Burgeoning is not innocent. I didn't want to be a girl, so I made myself into a ship, a mass of confused rigging. A full moon hung over the crow's nest. I dyed my hair black. The knife was an ordinary kitchen implement roped to my waist, used to crack the breastbone of countless cockerels. I pressed the frog creatures to my own amphibious breasts. Up next, please welcome Janet Fitch.
Well, I thought I'd bring a little revolution. This is the beginning of the Russian Revolution. And the speaker is a poet, and she's 16, the first day of the revolution. International Women's Day. In the midst of that terrible winter of 1917, after weeks of 20, 30 below, the weather suddenly turned fair. Overnight, thermometers soared from 4 below to 40 degrees. just in time for the International Women's Day March. Had the weather not cooperated, who knows whether events would have unfolded as they did. That short warm spell changed the world. What is history? Is it the trace of a footstep in wet cement? Is it the story of important men in smoky rooms and on battlefields? The inevitable outcome of great impersonal forces? Or is it a collision of chance events, like the sudden rise of the Mercury on February 23, 1917, in the midst of a hungry midwinter and a ruinous war? The day before, Putilov armaments factory locked out its thousands of workers, the owners claiming there wasn't enough materiel to keep the factory running, though it was more likely in retaliation for strikes. So the essential ingredients happened to come together on that one day. Thousands of unemployed, the striking workers, warm weather, and the Women's Day March. In the street, the sun splashed the storefronts, gilding churches and washing the faces of the apartment houses all down Nevsky Prospect to the Admiralty Needle. It poured over the idle office workers and sleepy clerks, haulers and porters. It felt like a holiday. Carrying the big camera, Solon Moisievich shouldered and excused me his way to the curb, and we four filled in right behind him. Around us, the crowd thickened, well-heeled ladies, gentlemen smelling of cedar chips, pale shop girls and carters, carpenters and doormen, school kids on their day off, laughing and shoving, even a few drunks. A vendor moved among us selling sunflower seeds. Watch your purse, a young man told his pretty wife. A sudden whiff of cigar made me think of Kolya. Look, here they come. A man who looked like a pool room sharp in his checkered coat and flat cap pointed towards the Admiralty. Then, way up at the end of Nevsky, a black dot appeared, a bit of red. As I watched, the dot grew into a bobbing mass, adorned with small smears of scarlet. Now a noise, faint, like the whispering of waves on a pebbly beach. A low, gravelly chatter arose and soon echoed off the buildings and rolled down the boulevard. The marchers were chanting, but we weren't close enough yet to hear the words. Closer they came. So many women. My eye had only beheld such numbers on the parade ground of the Field of Mars, but these weren't soldiers. They were simply workers, mouths open, chanting, "We want bread." Bread, was that too much to ask? Now we could read the banners, "Down with hunger, bread and justice, we want bread in the 8-hour day." There would be no more pretending that the city didn't see them. Their footsteps resounded on the wooden paving blocks, their high voices begging for justice. I was too young to have witnessed the revolution of 1905, when the poor had come to petition the Tsar and were slaughtered. Their reward, 12 more years of hunger and oppression, and a few crumbs of concession to the middle class, like the powerless Duma. I prayed this time would be different. Now they were upon us. Bathed in morning light on this miraculous day, it was as if God himself had blessed the procession, had dipped in gold their banners, their shabby coats and worn scarves. Shy women marched arm in arm in 4s and 5s, 10s and 20s, unused to such boldness, following behind their more determined sisters holding the banners. What desperate bravery at a time when it had been declared that any two people assembling in public could be arrested. How this must feel to them to emerge from their dark, airless slums, hidden away in the shadows of the factories on the outskirts of the city, to walk in the sunshine down the most glittering street of them all, to bear witness to all they had suffered and demand that justice be done. They smiled, awed by their audacity. These women stitched our boots, wove the clothes we wore, cut our coats, fashioned the button, knit our underwear and our hose. These women and men, too, wouldn't stay hidden with their suffering one more day. Now a small group of stylish women passed by under the banners, "Socialist women stand for new lives." I could well imagine myself among them. A young woman in a tricorn hat and bobbed hair could be me in a year or two. It was their march to begin with, but their movement had been joined not by a phalanx, but by an army. A tram running alongside the marchers braked to a stop, its female driver getting out and leaving her tram load stranded. Her car blocked the one behind it, and soon the smell of stale electricity, static electricity, and the screech of hot metal stained the air. How comical the passengers looked, peering out the windows, confused to be so at the mercy of the working class. Varvara laughed. "You're not going to make that appointment," she called out to the bewildered passengers still in their seats. Now, George.
Hello, everybody. Thank you all for inviting me to participate in this. It's an honor to be here with so many of my peers and people whose names I've seen and hadn't met in person yet, and so many friends, so I'm very excited. I'm going to read a couple of very short pieces from a small chapbook I put together last year for Writ Large Press. I wanted to start just a little bit of background. For the new year, I've been digging in archives, LA archives, and I found this really interesting old invitation from the Ambassador Hotel for New Year's Eve, 1946. And they were giving away a baby panda to all the women who attended. So I posted it, was sort of, because it was bizarre. But one of my old colleagues from the Times, he immediately flagged it and said, "Well, you know, that's a really nice souvenir, Lynell, but you know that you or I would not have been able to go to the Ambassador Hotel. We probably wouldn't have been able to get in on New Year's Eve," and that is very true. And I told him, I said, yes, there are a lot of family stories about exactly that. So I'm going to read a piece that deals with that, addresses that in a little way. Disobedience, L.A. Noire, for real.
Yeah.
They will discreetly send us away. Imagine, Mrs. Pleasant tells me 5 decades after the events transpired. Just imagine. You will dress up. You will pull out your summer sleeveless dress, turquoise and white. It looks rich against your skin. Everyone says so. Shoes, something to think about. Slingback, peep toe, kitten heels, as you will be doing some walking. Your young man will show to retrieve you. He will be attired in a light linen suit. You will make your way east to west to Sunset Boulevard. Nat Cole Trio on the radio. You will find parking on the street because you always have, like the starlets do. It will be easy like that. You and your young man meet the others with their dates, dresses in sherbet tones of lime, lemon, and tangerine. There will be a buzz of catch-up and anticipation. You will queue up in front of an entrance to a busy night spot. A simple short velvet rope will seem to be the only thing between you and a leisurely supper, maybe dancing too. It will be such a lovely, soft summer night, no matter what. You will tell yourselves. Time will seem to pass slowly. The palm trees and hills soften into silhouettes. The sky appears to pale before it completely darkens. You will need the soft mood. You will see the soft mood, the light, the white-jacketed waiters floating back and forth just beyond the door's threshold. You will hear the muffled hum of conversation, laughter ringing like crystal. After some time, a white man in a black suit and starched white pocket square will emerge. His cologne will precede him. He will tap your young man on the shoulder and extend his hand as if in a handshake, firm and unafraid. Your young man, shoulder square, will signal with just a raised chin. You will all, as a group, step as one, moving away from the door, away from that possibility of the evening, down the sidewalk, across the street. You will move further away from that moment. But the memory will never leave you. They will do it differently here. They will pay you to go somewhere else. No fire hose, no attack dogs, no bare teeth used shouting. That's what Mrs. Pleasant tells me many, many decades later. The memory still so fresh, so raw. I have had to wait decades for it to dry, to temper enough for me to put it down in the pages of my own daybooks. A memory of a memory. You don't forget. A gesture, a tilt to the head that says, just disappear. Move along, please. No scene. Good night. We knew that in Hollywood they will always pay in crisp, cool bills, folding money, said Mrs. Pleasant. We will take that money, like always, and use it for essential things: tuition, textbooks, next semester's clothes, car repair, to help family or neighbor make rent, maybe just keep the lights on. This was disobedience, just another shade of it. We'll have a lovely evening on them, unscathed, Mrs. Pleasant said brightly. But the memory, all of it, edged in a tone that I knew, and she meant to make sure I'd know, revealed otherwise. And I'm going to zip into the future past. I am as weary as I'm wary. Reportage 4/29/92 from the archives. This is about being a reporter and being on both sides of it. I remember only pieces of the morning, afternoon, none of it orderly. I remember a verdict, but no memory, no trace at all of how I heard it. I remember sitting in a newsroom, my corner desk shielded by a partition, a barricade that allowed me just enough privacy to put my head down, tear up out of frustration, sadness, anger, but not despair, not yet. I remember just how panic jets through a body. I remember sliding onto the freeway, eerily empty, middle of the afternoon. I remember listening to unfiltered panic over the radio, reporters not reporting, but emoting, the tremor of judgment in their voices. I remember other reporters employing the weighted word thug all too easily, too frequently. I remember knowing firmly in this moment and forever after that objective was indeed a lie. It had always been. I remember driving to a location, a restaurant, to conduct a pre-scheduled, unrelated interview about migration out of the American South, about African American families moving west, searching for some difficult to articulate, more something between grief and salvation. I remember the color, glow of the room I sit in with my interview subject, pink and peach, and the soft golden lounge light that I am sure was installed for mood decades ago. I remember starkly thinking, mood. This mood atmosphere seems incongruous, too polite, dreamlike, out of time. I remember her, the woman with the silver marcelled waves, sitting across from me on a cushioned banquette, speaking slowly, tentatively, in her sweet Louisiana cadenced accent of another era, now pausing for an uncomfortable interval, her eyes fixed just above my head. I remember that I don't follow her gaze, not at first, but something tells me she's seeing into our future. I quarter turn and look up at a suspended TV screen, soundless but loud with images, crowds pressing onto sidewalks, breaching thresholds. I imagine the pitch of the fury. I know later I will be part of a crowd somewhere, crossing into a new territory, hoping language will catch up. Dear, she says finally. The word floats, turns cartwheels, crashes through the silence. Dear, I think it's time for us to go. Thank you. And next, Liz Gonzalez.
I stand with LAUSD teachers and students. Epigraph. You can safely assume that you've created God in your own image when it turns out that God hates all the same people you do. Anne Lamott. White Jesus. White Jesus is a gold digger, jams his hands deep into the pockets of the working class, grabs all he can until not even lint is left. White Jesus hates children, locks them up, drugs them, abuses them, and kills them. White Jesus pillages and plunders tierra, ocean, drinking water, air, life. He leads his worshipers to a toxic river and drowns them during their baptism. That beautiful, blonde, blue-eyed, snow-white Jesus that peers down from high above is a figment of his followers' sense of entitlement. The real Jesus is on the no-fly list. He's the man serving 30 years in a private prison for pot possession. The refugee dying from a respiratory infection at a concentration camp on the border. The trans woman beaten unconscious and tossed into a lake. The 15-year-old boy who came out and was evicted from home and family the same day. The single mother who can't afford medical insurance and child care. The crowd dodging bullets at a school, a bar, a mall, a movie theater, and so on and so on. The real Jesus has been banished from the White House, where his corazón is needed most to make this country a home for all of us. U.S.
Yes.
Thank you. Brian Ingram.
Don't feel badly. I think so far everyone has forgotten. Is that right? As soon as I was invited to participate in this moment and gather together with you guys, I knew that I was going to do my best to bring some Southern master onto the stage. As someone who carries his accent with him everywhere he goes, along with my Alabama heritage, I felt like that's part of my duty, to make sure that I stress the reality of an America which is constant migration. There is no such thing as some original America. It's always been a country of travelers and stayers. And so everyone gets to belong. And so then I had thought, well, okay, who am I going to pick? I've been guilty over the years of finding solace in the sort of Epicurean idea that confusion can be the sign of a mature and open mind. Until it finally occurred to me that my confusion was not doing anyone any good. So I settled on Eudora Welty because she has said some things about being an activist as a writer. We have her iconic photographs as well. She's there for her testimony, and she reminds us, I believe, that we can trust our eyes and our ears and our imaginations as well. So it's good to be reminded about that from a master, hopefully daily, if you can read the right books. In any case, she said in her book of essays, The Eye of the Story, in her one essay, Must the Novelist Crusade, she says this: we must be able, ready, to enter into the minds of our people, all of them, to comprehend them, us, and then to make characters and plots and stories that in honesty and with honesty reveal them, ourselves, in whatever situation we live through in our times. This is the continuing job, and it's no harder now than it ever was, I suppose. Every writer, like everybody else, thinks he's living through the crisis of the ages. To write honestly and with all our powers is the least we can do and the most. She practiced what she preaches here. And if you're not already familiar with the story, where is this voice coming from? Do you know this story? In 1963, she heard a report of the murder, the assassination of Medgar Evers, and she said it was the first time she wrote a story based on anger and outrage. And she wrote it in 24 hours. And with rapid changes, she managed to publish it in the New Yorker 13 days after the man was finally captured. And by the way, he was not sent to prison. Some of you, I'm sure, know that, but if you don't, it's no surprise. We're living in an ahistorical age, and we're not reminded as much as we should be of everything which preceded our current moment and which still lives with us. And so it's the weight of the past which is exploding in these ways that we need to be able to talk about. But I can't read that story to you. So you're going to have to go and find it and remember it again when you reread it. I can't stand to look at your faces as I read it. It's horrifying and irresistible and true. She was 57 years old, and she imagined the first-person voice of the killer and created a portrait of self-destructive hate. And so that's your homework, I suppose. What I am going to read, because all of her stories are acts of compassion, is the beginning of The Whistle, which is about tenant farmers during the Depression era and the victimization which they were often, which was imposed upon them. So listen to this lovely language and remember, I suppose, here too, she's imagining what it was like, and she's right. I shouldn't have said that ahead of time. You can tell yourselves. Night fell. The darkness was thin, like some sleazy dress that has been worn and worn for many winters and always lets the cold through to the bones. Then the moon rose. A farm lay quite visible, like a white stone in water, among the stretches of deep woods and their colorless dead leaf. By a closer and more searching eye than the moon's, everything belonging to the Mortons might have been seen, even to the tiny tomato plants in their neat rows closest to the house, gray and feather-like, appalling in their exposed fragility. The moonlight covered everything and lay upon the darkest shape of all, the farmhouse, where the lamp had just been blown out. Inside, Jason and Sarah Morton were lying between the quilts of a pallet, which had been made up close to the fireplace. A fire still fluttered in the grate, making a drowsy sound now and then, and its exhausted light beat up and down the wall, across the rafters, and over the dark pallet where the old people lay, like a bird trying to find its way out of the room. The long-spaced, tired breathing of Jason was the only noise besides the flutter of the fire. He lay under the quilt in a long shape like a bean, turned on his side to face the door. His lips opened in the dark, and out he breathed, in and out, slowly and with a rise and fall, over and over, like a conversation or a tale, a question or a sigh.
Our next reader is Margaret. It's an honor to read with you all on the breath of revolt. Two very short poems. The first one, a sonnet in blank verse. Goes the jet laying down its shadow, a fleeing beast grazing rapid ground. Goes the clone undoing species. Goes the email's whoosh, alone to others. Goes the boy abused to field. Goes his kite skyward, torn agape. Goes his clouded mind. Go the soldiers to Iraq. Go the drones dispatched far before them. Go the blown out walls in Raqqa. Go bags of flour among rubble. Go the refugees broken to Jordan. Goes their God to whom they pray. Goes ISIS deeper. Goes the orphaned child othered ever over the border. Goes the homeless girl back under the boat's hull on the LA River. Go the gangs, the Bloods, Crips. Goes the meth, smack, from Compton to Tallahassee. Goes the Oxy C from Big Farm to your door. Go the migrants toward the tear gas border. Go their kids, toddlers too, toward their cots in detention centers. Going with space blankets and without parents. Going strange and long. The wall. It was not our will to have a wall, but the rulers, he said the wall was good for our will, which was different from his. Oh, there were some that wanted a wall, people that had been hurt by someone on the other side. But a wall has two sides, like everyone. But most people were not happy with the wall, and in protest carried articles of clothing like flags to hang on the wall. There were multicolored shirts, underwear, blouses, pillowcases, socks, and bandanas hanging from the wall, so that the wall, especially in wind, looked like a human, moving thing, like the people who approached the wall and tried to cross it. So you could not tell the wall from the people, and the ruler became very angry and dismantled the wall, rebuilding it all around his own big house, where he invited all of his friends, all 25, who wanted a different kind of wall, many of whom built even smaller walls within the greater wall, walls within walls where their wills were the same. But their children, wanting to leave, tried to climb the walls. So the ruler put broken glass on top of the walls and had all the walls chalked white, so that if anyone touched the walls, he would know. But the glare off the walls caused everyone to go blind, until in that new dark, they seemed content again within the walls. One of my favorite people and writers, the author of 3 collections of fiction, including Break Any Woman Down, Dana Johnson.
We will be celebrating the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. Next Monday. Yeah. And so today I thought I'd read something from his 1963 publication, Why We Can't Wait, yes. Particularly from Letter from a Birmingham Jail, in which he is discussing being called an extremist. And I thought his response to this is ever timely, particularly when the right is trying to sort of color the left as extreme. And I'm hearing that a lot in the media, the extreme left. So this is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. response to that. Just sections. I had also hoped that the white moderate would reject freedom. I'm sorry, let me restart again. I had also hoped that the white moderate would reject the myth concerning time in relation to the struggle for freedom. I have just received a letter from a white brother in Texas. He writes, all Christians know that the colored people will receive equal rights eventually. But it is possible that you are in too great a religious hurry. It has taken Christianity almost 2,000 years to accomplish what it has. The teachings of Christ take time to come to earth. Such an attitude stems from a tragic misconception of time, from the strangely irrational notion that there is something in the very flow of time that will inevitably cure all ills. Actually, time itself is neutral. It could be used either destructively or constructively. More and more, I feel that the people of ill will have used time much more effectively than have the people of goodwill. We will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. Human progress never rolls in on wills and inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts of men willing to be co-workers with God, and without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the forces of social stagnation. We must use time creatively in the knowledge that the time is always ripe to do right. Now is the time to make real the promise of democracy and transform our pending national elegy into a creative psalm of brotherhood. Now is the time to lift our national policy from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of human dignity. Will we be extremists for hate or for love? Will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice or for the extension of justice? In that dramatic scene on Calvary's Hill, 3 men were crucified. We must never forget that all 3 were crucified for the same crime, the crime of extremism. 2 were extremists for immorality, and thus fell below their environment. The other, Jesus Christ, was an extremist for love, truth, and goodness, and thereby rose above his environment. Perhaps the South, the nation, and the world are in dire need of creative extremists. And please welcome. Welcome, Alicia Partnoy.
Buenas tardes. 42 years ago, on this very same day, I had spent my first night in a concentration camp in Argentina. And it's a wonderful place to keep resisting 42 years later. I'm going to read from Call Me Libertad, my introduction to Call Me Libertad Poems Between Borders, published by formerly Civic and now Freedom for Immigrants. co-edited with Cristina Fiallo and Cristina Scholl. And you can find it on the Freedom for Immigrants website, where it says our work, where it says storytelling. My story. During what the military dictatorship in Argentina called its dirty war against subversives, between 1976 and 1983, 30,000 human beings were abducted and disappeared into secret prisons. Most were tortured and killed, and their bodies never returned to their families. They were the disappeared. Very few of us survived and were kept without charges as political prisoners. After my 5 months in a secret detention camp, I spent 2.5 years as a political prisoner. In those prisons, there was a reason for poetry notebooks to be confiscated, for drawings to be crumpled and stepped on, for rings crafted from soup bones to be thrown by the guards down the latrines. Even the letters we sent to our children were stamped as dangerous content and returned to us. They were indeed dangerous. Poetry, art, and crafts lifted our spirits and reminded the world of our humanity. By Christmas 1979, I was driven from prison to an airport and forced into exile. One could say I was deported from my own country. I could not smuggle my notebook out of there, but it did not concern me much to leave my poetry behind. I was only looking forward to being finally reunited with my little daughter and joining her father in the United States. When I landed in Seattle, Washington, I found a refugee resettlement program, a solidarity committee, a Chicano center, and a Catholic church that embraced my family and helped us heal. My husband was waiting at SeaTac International Airport, where all local newspapers covered our arrival. Reporters illustrated their articles with the Statue of Liberty and the American flag. Their message: what I had endured only happened in other places, and I was now safe. Today, 4 decades later, most people in the United States continue to ignore that in the land of liberty, a perverse prison system makes invisible millions of women, men, and children guilty of being undocumented refugees or job seekers. The workshop. In September 2015, Civic, now Freedom for Immigrants, invited me to lead a workshop. When I walked into their luminous retreat room overseeing the Pacific Ocean, I immediately felt the solidarity in the air. I have brought with me poems to share, ideas about testimonial texts to present, and a couple of writing prompts. I knew that everyone in the group had much to tell the world about their experience with the U.S. immigration detention system. However, since people tend to be shy about their ability to express themselves in writing, you know about that, I just expected to leave with 2 or 3 collective works and a long-term plan to gather more writings from people in detention and their visiting allies. During the workshop, I read poems by Evangelina Arce, a mother of Ciudad Juarez, who began writing after her daughter Silvia was kidnapped. I passed around the poetry collections produced by the Mothers of Plaza de Mayo during the dictatorship in Argentina, and I shared my mother's and my daughter's poems about their own visits to me in prison. I told workshop participants of exiled Chilean poet Cecilia Vicuña and her idea of palabrarmas, or word weapons. Then I showed participants how Vicuña opened the word solidarity in Spanish to read sol y dad. That means to give and give son. The next task during the workshop was for the participants to gather in groups and talk about their experiences in immigration detention centers. When ready, they could write collectively about their memories, their feelings. In less than an hour, many pages were filled with meaningful, strong words of denunciation and hope. Chole Diaz, a bilingual visitor, volunteer at the Otay Detention Center in California, wrote, Como los pétalos de un girasol, nos tomamos las manos para darnos valor. Like sunflower petals, we hold hands to share courage. Nurtured with compassion, watered with tears of impotence, and fertilized with solidarity, many testimonial texts blossomed that September morning. Others were harvested from the notebooks and letters of people in detention and their visitors. They gather, like sunflowers shedding their seeds to inspire us. These words, these drawings, and the work in solidarity will give us the courage to bear witness to injustice and work together to end systems of isolation. Thank you. It's my honor to introduce Sherman Pearl.
First, my deep thanks to Jim and Lynn and David for bringing us together in such perilous times. I'm going to read two pieces, and the first I discovered in an anthology called An Anthology of Dissent that was published in Chicago last year. And I just want to note that a copy of this anthology has gone to each person in Congress and to, I guess this one was wrapped in crepe paper, but it was sent to the White House. I doubt that it'll get, that it's been read. But the first piece I want to read is by Jared Smith, who I didn't know till I discovered him in this anthology. And Jared Smith has published 17 books of poetry, and he's been on the poetry scene on the progressive side for more than 50 years. So it's a discovery for all of us. This piece is called Something Dark Beyond Words. There's something waiting in the autumn woods, there ahead, right there, beyond that crest, that hollow where shadows bend its red claws into the leaves. You can smell it, something musky in the air, and it beats its massive paws up and down, a trumpeting and tramping wholly out of place along this casual path. But it waits for no one, and it waits for anyone, and its roaring shakes the earth beneath your feet, and its drumming haunts the dreams of better men, and its drumming wakes its neighbors, who start to sing, and they sing of blood and feathers, and they sing of armies trudging forward, and they sing of earth, claiming what the seasons bring it out of time. And it's right there up ahead where the crest is, and you can smell it in the air and taste it on your tongue, and revulsion comes to claim you, pulls you back from that path along the river where the leaves are turning colors and you shrink into the shadows, but it drags you from your soul. And it pulls out all your words and drips them in the river, scattered by the seasons. And you wish for better men and better women, but they cry and run when they see you on that path by the river. There is something in the woods, and it is coming. It is no longer waiting in the pages of past history. It is darkness for the country and will burn out our tomorrows. And we have no trumpet to blow down its walls and fences that were whispers in the wind not so very long ago. This is a very recent poem of mine, triggered by the mysterious disappearance from our freezer of a pint of ice cream. And the poem is titled, Ice Cream, You Scream. Where did it go, that creamy quart of sweet democracy? We thought it would keep in the freezer, fresh as the day we bought it, saved for posterity, for an ever fairer future. Thought we'd serve it up to celebrate its endurance. But then, when we went to adorn it with tiny flags and share it with everyone, since everyone was invited, I screamed, you screamed, we all screamed that it was gone, stolen or lost or consumed by culprits who'd left not a trace, just the bitter cold that was meant to preserve the system. We promised to replace it with something richer, but there was no better treat than the democracy we cherished. Now its flavors and colors and varieties lay wasting in some mogul's bloated belly or melting under a merciless sun that turned it into inedible mush. All we can hear through the anguish is the jingly music of the ice cream truck calling to us from somewhere far down the street. I'm pleased to get to know Stephen Rains.
I want to thank the organizers for this event and just to echo the excitement that I've been hearing about just that this event is happening, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. I am going to read one poem that I wrote for this event, and it came about inspired by a conversation I had about 2 years ago, and also I was thinking about resisting, and how police are the enforcers, and how for someone like me to resist police is a luxury, and for people who do not look like me, it can be life-threatening. And so this is about a conversation with my friend Alex. Visiting her home state of North Carolina, I sat with Alex in an outdoor cafe, her with coffee and me with tea. Because of the news, my concerns, I timidly ask her how she is doing it. How does she live with the fear of what might befall the 2 black boys she is raising? All the men in my life are older, have outlived mostly, when others, especially the police, would find them men of malice or threat. Alex has said she's warned them, told them, you do everything the cops say, don't resist. Your job is to stay alive, don't die. Your job is to stay alive. How many years will these young men hold that career position? Their employment in the staying alive business breaks child labor laws, require working over 40 hours a week, on call at all times. My first job was teaching cotillion, instructing suburban kids how to shake hands, chew gum with their mouths closed, dance the foxtrot, Charleston, and sit politely in a chair. Cotillion was never on my resume, and I'm doubtful those dance steps are even used by those students today. Your job is to stay alive. I don't fault Alex. I want her children to succeed in this employment of keeping their heart beating, of breathing. I met the young boys once, know very little, and yet love them by extension to her. She doesn't have an answer to how she's coping. The waiter refills her coffee, and the subject changes to other topics of the living. And I am honored to introduce the next reader, Joseph Rios.
I kind of, David St. John sent me an email, a couple days ago, mentioning this poet, a friend of his, and a really important poet in my sort of, in the beginning of me becoming a poet in Fresno, was Luis Omar Salinas. And he wrote this book, The Crazy Gypsy. And I want to, in thinking about how what David started with us, started saying in the beginning about this being a war of language, and what the piece that Doug read about thinking about times when literacy meant death, you know. And even also thinking in less than 10 years ago that books like Omar's were banned in places like Arizona from little brown kids being able to read them, pulled from their classrooms. And it just reminds me that the things that we write, the things that we decide to say, and when we decide to say the truth, that these books are dangerous to people who are trying to oppress us. So I'm going to read something from Omar's book. It's called The Aztec Angel. I am the Aztec Angel, criminal of a scholarly society. I do favors for whimsical magicians, where I pawn my heart for truth and find my way through obscure streets of soft-spoken harikiris. I am the Aztec Angel, forlorn passenger on a train of chicken farmers and happy children. I am the Aztec Angel, fraternal partner of an Orthodox society where Pachuco children hurl stones through poetry rooms and end up in a car, their bones itching and their hearts busted from malnutrition. I am the Aztec Angel who frequents bars, spends evenings with literary circles, and socializes with spics, Negroes, wops, and collapses on his way to funerals. Drunk, lonely, bespectacled, the sky opens my veins like rain, clouds go berserk around me, and my Mexican ancestors chew my fingernails. I am an Aztec Angel, offspring of a woman who was beautiful. That's Omar Salinas. I'll read a sort of section from the book that calls back to him several times. It's from a section called Round 2, Saving Nations, and it begins with an epigraph, if you can call it that, a line from Rocky 3, where Apollo says, "Damn, man, what the hell you doing? This man will knock you on your ass. You thought I was tough? This chump will kill you. Come on, what's the matter with you?" And Rocky says, "Tomorrow. Let's do it tomorrow." And Apollo says, famously, "There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow." So, there is no tomorrow. Josefo's college roommate once believed it necessary to take over Wheeler Hall at Berkeley, chain the doors, and hold off the police for many days. There are many well-recorded facts that could have motivated such an action. When asked to explain himself, his roommate recited this Mario Savio line from memory. "There comes a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part, and you got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon all the apparatus, and you got to make it stop." Ishmael Armendariz, known to his grandmother and only his grandmother as Ismael, explained the need for direct action in this manner. Commenting further, Ish went on to recall Tupac's famous poetic metaphor of the rose that grew from concrete. Ishmael said that we should encourage and foster the growth of these roses, yes, but that this was not enough. The problem lies not with the roses. The problem is one of concrete. Ishmael said, "We roses have to do more than show off our pretty petals. We roses must grow hands and feet. We roses must remove the concrete, man, or none of this shit is worth a damn." There is no tomorrow. Fool, don't you realize revolution is just romance? Martina Spala wrote something about a lover's hand, circling, grasping, clasping, hugging and shit, telling me you know nothing of love. I asked instead for a bus pass like a smartass on his way to mass, not a donkey, but the thing we carry behind us. Dear Professor Marcial Gonzalez, I hate to be the one to deliver this message, but the poet known as Luis Omar Salinas also known as the Crazy Gypsy, also known as Salinas, also known as the Aztec Angel, also known as Omar, died while performing the Salinas Shuffle. He will not be available for a reading now or in the future. Javier and I wanted to buy a photo of him and Jose Montoya, the grandfather of us all, but we couldn't afford the $100 price tag. Oh yeah, I'm still wrestling with your section about the parataxis, hypotaxis antinomy. Honestly, parts of it still are too much for a dirty-faced mocoso like me, but something about it makes a lot of sense. There is no tomorrow. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Billy D selling malt liquor, the Beeve huffing through a Chet t-shirt, Mexiganitos multiply in third grade classrooms, and Freddie Soto's still dead, regardless. Richmond Amtrak, thinking on Calwa, grandma's bobby pins, hooded passengers, rocky S docks, barbed wire grays, indoor walkers. See, the sea needs protection from the nakedness of your brown toes. Itchy chin hair, bald head, no beanie. Words like justice and stylistic and all of it. Give me a bigote for all seasons, like Coppola, Samuel Bean, Furious Styles, Fidel Castro, Monk, and Common Sense. Thank you. The next reader will be Mona Simpson.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Well, I wrote a little something for today, but I'm a fiction writer, and my attempts to write something very, very, very short ends up sort of it's not. I wouldn't call it a poem. It's sort of between a grocery list and a New Year's resolution. So listening to all this good poetry, I decided first I Googled a real poem, not by me, by the Polish poet Adam Zagajewski, translated by Claire Kavanaugh. So we'll start with that. He's lived in exile most of his life, I think. I've never met him, but from what I gather, due to a government that we've only recently begun to experience. This is a poem called Try to Praise the Mutilated World. Try to praise the mutilated world. Remember June's long days and wild strawberries, drops of rosé wine. The nettles that methodically overgrow the abandoned homesteads of exiles. You must praise the mutilated world. You watched the stylish yachts and ships. One of them had a long trip ahead of it, while salty oblivion awaited others. You've seen the refugees going nowhere. You've heard the executioners sing joyfully. You should praise the mutilated world. Remember the moments when we were together in a white room and the curtain fluttered. Return in thought to the concert where music flared. You gathered acorns in the park in autumn and leaves eddied over the earth's scars. Praise the mutilated world and the gray feather a thrush lost and the gentle light that strays and vanishes and returns. Okay, here's my list. This is called Between What I Know and What I Do. I don't steal, though I was raised to. And the air sparks with ions when I sense an opportunity. What I do, I walk with lead footsteps, count them to myself. Away, away, away. Stolen flowers wilt, will not submit to the art of arrangement. We recycle, we compost, sort of. Just this year, I started throwing out plastic bags and use them for the dogs' walks. Every December, when I write the checks to our charities, I look at the bank balances 4 times a day. I have planted roses on land I don't own across the street, where a homeless man has begun to sleep. I think of calling the police, but don't. He is crushing the roses. Do the thorns prick him? I order more. Heirloom roses, named for poets. The internist says, immediate family alive? Not really, I say. Mother dead, brother dead. Your father is 88. How is his health? I don't know, I say. One day I will answer the phone and a cousin will tell me he's died. I traveled this year for work, but necessary? Not really. I bought a new dress, but I'm old. I could give more. Probably everyone in this room could give more. What will make us? Or should we forgive ourselves our tiny incremental movements towards goodness? Next, I'd like to introduce Hiram Sims.
All right. Get my phone out. This is to make sure I don't go over time. Richard Wright once said, "The artist must bow to the monster of his own imagination." I love that quote. I live by that quote. The artist must bow to the monster of his own imagination. I think imagination is monstrous for writers, and I love that quote in the context of this event because I feel like some people imagined all of us gathering here today. Imagined us, harassed us by email, phone calls and text messages to fulfill the work of their imagination. Perhaps imagined us getting dressed, ironing our clothes, pulling up the Uber so we can get here. So I'm just blessed to be a part of this work of an imagination, this event. While I was in an Uber, I looked up, I was looking at this word resist, and the definition says to exert oneself for the purpose of counteracting. To exert oneself for the purpose of counteracting. And I feel like a lot of my writing is about counteracting disconnection, which I feel is the root of all oppression, to be disconnected from other people. Eugene Debs said this quote. It's on the wall of the Library of Social Justice. The quote says, "While there is a lower class, I am in it. And while there is a criminal element, I am of it. And while there is a soul in prison, I am not free." And I was just like, wow. To have that level of connection to people who are suffering is something that I aspire to. And so I want to read a poem about connection, just one poem, about a connection that I experienced. My favorite place to eat is a taco truck on Figueroa and Vernon called Los Cardenales. And it's outside of a Shell gas station. And I tried to convince my wife to have our 10th anniversary. Because the food is so good. And she said, hell no. But me and my little cousin used to go there, and I saw something, connection happening there. And so this poem is called Los Cardenales for Andrea. Ain't no talk about immigration over here. No mention of the DREAM Act and how tax dollars might be wasted. Ain't no talk about how it used to be us working at AutoZone and now it's all them. No mention of our laziness or their work ethic. Just blacks and Mexicans marinating in carne inside of beef under boiled onions and drinking horchata dipped out of a multicultural melting pot. Ain't no talk about the Crips versus 18th Street feud going on right now, or how Gardena High has a small race riot every March during the last week of school. Ain't nobody arguing over how 67th Street used to be all black and now it ain't, or people mumbling under their breath about how they taken over. Just 25 Mexicans and me and Andrea standing up eating tacos because nobody needs chairs at 11 p.m. next to the Shell gas station. Ain't nobody running their mouth about the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, or how this was their land first, or how Olvera Street, the first street in LA, was Mexican. No discussions on how they work the jobs nobody wants anyway. Ain't no meditations on how they deserve or don't deserve driver's licenses, or them racist Arizona laws. Just Andrea and me. at the VIP parking at pump number 3, listening to an old school Robin Thicke song, thinking, damn, he sound black. And damn, these some good ass tacos. And damn, this is way better than that nasty garbage they sell at Taco Bell and Jack in the Box. And damn, it's good to see blacks and Mexicans stand together without arguing or shooting or fighting over the scraps we gotta share on Figueroa and Vernon. All right. Without further ado, my good friend, Phil Taggart.
Oh man, I gotta follow you. It's an honor to be here with all of you and joining our voices together in resisting and educating ourselves and actually just being together in this very trying time. I want to thank, of course, the Writers Resist people over here for asking me to read. I appreciate it. And of course, Beyond Baroque, which is a place for words. About 4 years ago, I ended up being a teacher in a community television station for a high school class. And one of the things that I started realizing, what their job was to put together a regular TV show. And so a lot of them didn't really know how to use their voices. And so this was a chance to kind of teach them how to use their voices. And of course, that means a lot of discussion. And so recently we had discussions about immigration, a lot of discussions about immigration. And one girl in the class, who was just incredibly quiet, said, my parents work in the fields. My parents are farm workers. And she says, I want to do a series on immigration. And I said, so what we did, we tried to figure out how to do that. And she started producing a regular show about talking with immigrants, interviewing immigrants to find out what their stories were. And this was a chance, and we are in a war of words. And this is a chance for them to learn how to use their words, to hear their words, and to know that they do have a voice. So I'm really kind of lucky. I don't know how much longer I can do it, but I'm enjoying it. This poem is Zero Tolerance. Has sort of an epigraph. I really don't care, do you? Written on Melania Trump's jacket as she visits the children's shelter in Texas, where children of migrants who are stopped at the U.S. border are detained after being separated from their parents. The officer said, I'm taking your child to get bathed. Thousands of children are taken from their parents, crying, drugged, handcuffed, put into cages, swaddled in tender age mylar blankets. On Christmas Eve, an 8-year-old boy dies in U.S. immigration custody. On TV, Fox and Friends say, these are not our children. A 7-year-old girl dies on December 8th while in U.S. immigration custody. At the Peace Lutheran Church in Arroyo Grande, the congregation prays for God to wrap President Trump in grace. These Christians say children of illegal aliens are not mistreated. Numbers are inked on their arms, and they are being bathed. And, thank you. And this is, I write a lot about homelessness and have for several years. And I decided to take the John and Yoko idea, war is over, concept for homelessness. Today, the homeless came home, plopped down on a chair, a sofa, kicked back, grabbed a cold drink from the fridge, sparkling apple cider, hot cocoa from the stove, ate a tasty meal, watched the news on TV, a movie, read a book, the comics, listened to music, took a hot shower, a bath, turned down the sheets to a warm, soft, clean bed, slept without nightmares. Thank you. Next we're going to listen to a very favorite poet of mine and good friend, Amy Uyematsu.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah. Okay, good. I'd like to thank the organizers for this important event. And just hearing all of you read, this is a good way to start January. Very energizing, very inspirational. And to those of you that wore red, I should have worn red today because I taught for LA Unified for 32 years as a high school math teacher. We went on strike 30 years ago, and we're going to go on strike again, so here's the teachers. I'm going to read two poems. The first one is called As American As. And I was thinking about the whole concept of what normal has become. You know, they keep talking about the new normal. So this is in 3 parts, but I'm just going to read the last one. And I hope you find this somewhat inspirational. I hope. Because we do have a wonderful history of resistance. Those of you that are as old as me, that might have been in the anti-war movement, the ethnic power movements, civil rights, I mean, it was wonderful. So this is what reminded me of that era. President's Day weekend 2018. Black Panther, the new Marvel comic film, breaking records for ticket sales. Many young fans, too young to know about the Black Panthers of my generation. It's the same feeling of ethnic pride as 50 years ago, when Oakland Black Panthers served free breakfast to children. 2 '68 Olympics medal winners gave the Black Power salute. And we sang with James Brown, I'm black and I'm proud, even if we weren't black. Revolutionary change, the new normal then, let it remain the new normal now. With Black Lives Matter, NFL players on bended knee, women's marches from coast to coast, high school students demanding anti-gun laws. 50 years ago, when Martin was killed, who could imagine we'd elect Barack Obama just 4 decades later? Hip-hop music and dance would be global staples. Claudine Rankin's Citizen, the only poetry bestseller. Yeah. Superheroes are nothing new in the struggle. Only this time, a Disney movie is giving every boy and girl, young and old, that big screen sensation of fighting for justice. As normal as Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, Harriet Tubman, on and on. Let us bridge the generations and remind all who will listen that it only takes one woman sitting on a bus to inspire hundreds. One farm worker, one union activist, one parent to build a movement based on the power of the people. The second poem I'm bringing in is talking about, we go through a lot of repeating cycles in American history. And there's a definite link between what my people, the Japanese Americans, experienced being put in concentration camps during World War II, and the deportations of Mexicans and Latino Americans. So this poem was written back in 2006, actually, but it still applies. And it was written around the Day of Remembrance. For those of you that don't know what that is, in February, Japanese Americans celebrate the Day of Remembrance because on that, I think it was February 18th, Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which sent us to the camps, 120,000 Issei and Nisei. If I stumble on one of these words, please excuse me, there's a long word in here. Unalienable. Oh, I know. The other thing I want to tell you is that we always think about, the Declaration of Independence. We kind of take it for granted. We all know it. But I started thinking about unalienable rights, and the word alien is in there. Unalienable rights. Did anyone warn us about the alien in Unalienable? The FBI finds Dad within hours of Pearl Harbor. Somehow, they know he's a Nisei student from California. Somehow, they find his precise dorm room at the huge University of Chicago. The FBI escorting him to a train that leaves town before midnight. Did anyone warn us it's happened before? It is just 2 years after Wall Street fell when the INS deports young Ignacio Peña and all of his family of 7. Their crime? Being Mexican. Though Peña is born in a state called Idaho, he will always be foreign. But he comes back to tell they just kicked us out with what we were wearing. Did anyone warn us? We can still hear the screams, Racia, raid, Racia, at nearby La Pasita. We can hear those frantic mariachis trying to rouse spirits as hundreds wait at Union Station. Does anyone care? No one remembers Dad's sister Alice, who contracts TB at Manzanar and never gets past her teens. Will anyone protect us when our rights as citizens undergo American subversion and we're the unwanted alien, which translates to detention, relocation, confiscation, degradation, subjugation, violation? Did anyone warn us about the alien in Unalienable? Last but not least, Vanessa, Angélica, Villarreal.
Thank you so much, everyone who has waited this out until the end. I'll try to keep this brief. I want to dedicate my reading to all of the migrant children now of history, including my mother. I wanted to read a poem from my book about my mother's migration, but I wrote this during Obama's tenure, and all of these poems are insufficient. They're not angry enough. So I wrote this poem, and I have been deciding whether I am going to read this. I've been editing, listening to all of y'all. I mean, because it's just language sometimes doesn't feel like enough. It has lost so much meaning. So here's something new. Forgive the melding of the personal and the political, but they're inextricable. I am not here to mourn anymore. I am not here to mourn an election. I am not here to mourn democracy, this president, any president, to mourn the dawn of fascism. My body remembers the meager portions of arroz during Reagan. My first grade recurring nightmares of tanks during HW's Kuwait. My used Saturn repoed at 19 years old during Bush. We got exactly what we have allowed and allowed and allowed. This is not a broken system or the downfall of Western democracy. It is the government we deserve, working exactly how it was intended to work, for whom it was intended to work since the boats arrived. Power does not transfer peacefully. I am not here to mourn a system that has slaughtered, deported, detained, incarcerated my people, that walls the wild with sentries ready to shoot on sight, whose border patrol slashes water jugs left in mercy. I'm not here to mourn gated communities on stolen land I can never afford, a dream of ownership that picks up and moves when my family and I arrive, that buys up Highland Park family rental houses for cheap, flips them Property Brothers style with subway tile and wide plank floors and resells them for millions, to trust fund liberals who never want to live their parents' white flight life and have great politics, eco startups, vegan co-ops, black and brown best friends. In Los Angeles, the houses are so big and white and clean they eclipse the sun, so that on the street it will take a minute for my eyes to adjust to see the armies are coming. Trump is in my birthplace right now, McAllen, Texas, one of the most peaceful cities in America, where the undocumented population is highest in the nation, giving birth to citizens, farmers, nurses, scholars, me. Underinsured, underemployed, and he will land and speak lies to our faces, build walls with our bones. I am not here to mourn a government that can be shut down over whether an expensive, ecologically disastrous, structurally unsound, inhumane, racist wall should be built on stolen land, a symbol between supposedly allied countries whose relationship has been one of colonialism, erasure, deportation, genocide. Your representatives are actually divided, hung on this fact. Meanwhile, the bodies swing between the legislative and executive branch. I am not here. I am not even here anymore, my sagging body invisible to men, to love, daily salting its former self in mourning, thyroid slogging the pesticides of dollar store produce and 99-cent milk. My C-section scar crooked as a cabbage leaf tear. Membranes inflamed from the smog of Prius exhaust. The cobwebs of paranoia and suicide sticky on a sick brain, still circling. Why, my God, this cruelty, why? Alone with a child in a cold apartment, left by a white man when he found out the world was always set up for him to find a thinner, happier, younger, whiter woman. I am here today, though. I am here to call into the room the memory of Jacqueline Amé Rosemary Cal Makin. You may not remember her. She was a 7-year-old indigenous Mayan girl who migrated from Guatemala, spoke only Quechua, who died in Border Patrol custody on December 8th of a swollen brain and liver failure. She died of dehydration. She died of journey. She died of detainment. We killed her. This is not Coco. She died of our own brutality, our inaction, our tolerant liberalism, a civility that allows rhetoric to accuse her own family of her death. They chose to cross the border illegally. Detainment is mercy. She should have been shot on sight, they say. She died of decades of U.S. political and military intervention on her land, destabilized economies, the brutality of survival. She died of invisibility. She died of a doctored history. I am not here to resist anymore. I've resisted my whole life just to live, scraped by on dollar menu meals and Walmart coupons, shoplifted underwear, and stolen movies with friends at the theater, not just at 14, but at 36, too. Driven $2,000 cash cars from Craigslist with expired stickers. I've only ever tasted the America you mourn while with white men, protected by their lust for something exotic. I've only ever believed in justice when I could send a little money home, buy a house so that I could take in my family's tired bodies and heal them of an unjust struggle, fix their papers, take them to the ocean. But instead, today my father is ill, angry, suicidal, tells me about the cannibal Illuminati in LA, his eyesight almost totally gone from diabetic macular degeneration, still drinking in the darkest parts of YouTube. My mother's foot is broken in 3 places from overwork, years of hairline fractures webbing her feet. My brother is 23 and has never been to the dentist. My uncle is undocumented and living in Edinburgh, 2 miles from a detention center. He loves his wife, his dog, grows roses. Half my family is undocumented, undereducated, illiterate, navigating trauma and perpetuating its abuses. What do I have to mourn? It's been like this for us since the beginning. I am here to call into the room the memories of the dead, your dead, mine, string together their teeth into necklaces. I'm no Christian, but for brevity's sake, I'll ask of you what Jesus did. Give everything up. Fight for the weakest among us. Fuck kings, fuck politics, fuck churches, fuck empire. I am here to avenge every violated body. Resistance is not enough. Turn your poems into justice. Because no matter how hard we try, they won't turn into water.
Breathtaking. I hope David and Jim will join me up here at the podium. This is a community effort. Yes, we got it going, but all of you, both the readers and those of you who are listening today, but will be reading somewhere tomorrow or the day after that, I think can't help but leave here feeling inspired, more committed than ever to do whatever our individual voices can do to fight what we see going on in this country around us. But on our small scale, today, Sunday, in Beyond Baroque in Venice, California, we've done something very important. And that is, we have spoken out. So thanks to all of you.
So after listening to everyone today, I've decided we're going to change this for next year, and it's going to be Writer's Attack. Yeah. And we're going to all bring our own palabrous weapons. Thank you, Alicia. And but thank you again. I just want to jump in on what Lynn said. This doesn't happen without you. So thank you all for your participation. Some of you came a distance. We truly appreciate it. It's important. Los Angeles has probably, at least in my opinion, the richest writing community in the country, and we need to exploit it, and we need to be a part of it, and we need to make it heard.
So go out there and attack.